Now, did I or did I not tell you in the last video that running a motorised bike is for enthusiasts? It's not like an electric bike where you can just hop on it and ride it, and if something breaks down you book it into the shop and it gets fixed for an exorbitant cost. The difference with owning a petrol engine bike is that you have to be a tinkerer. Because it's a reciprocating engine, there's vibrations. That means on an old bike frame, this one I've just found out is almost 50 years old. Because there's so much going on, things are going to come loose. It's prudent to check your spokes once a week, to check the flex coupling that holds the sprocket on once a week if you're riding regularly. Once the bike's run in, these maintenance schedules can be relaxed a little. But while it's new, or let's say you bought it from someone else and you didn't build it yourself, that means you don't know their competence level. So it's prudent to go over the entire thing and make sure that everything's tickety-boo before you ride it, and keep doing it for the first few weeks. Now, I've had this for 2 weeks, built by somebody else. I took it for a ride yesterday, didn't have my camera with me so I couldn't film this, but what happened was the chain tensioner roller disintegrated. I can't blame the original builder, unless of course he'd been running the chain too tight, and that will put pressure onto the chain tensioner and can cause it to fail. Well, it fell to pieces. I'm now waiting for a new one to arrive. While I'm waiting, I've decided to make an upgrade. Now, the great thing about these bikes is that they've got a massive following, and you can buy every component separately if you need spares online. You can also buy an amazing range of hot up bits and improvements. One of the big improvements that you should make to these kits straight away is to get rid of this horrible chain tensioner and replace it with the type of chain tensioner that you'd get on a motorbike. Now, if you buy a motorbike one, it's going to be a little large and chunky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take inspiration from the people who make a gorgeous little sprung-loaded chain tensioner kit to go on one of these, and I'm going to make it myself. It's quite simple. It's a plate that bolts onto these 3 bolts here. It goes over here, provides a pivot point where my finger is, and that means an arm, a sprung-loaded arm, can come out here and tension the chain just here instead of here. That means that the mechanism is away from the wheel, because one of the worst things that can happen on a motorised bike is if this was to jam up and rotate into the spokes. It will destroy your rear wheel and be very dangerous to you, the rider. If you're travelling at high speed and your back wheel just collapses, who knows what might happen. And the other thing is, if there are no injuries whatsoever, you're faced with a long walk home carrying the back of your bike, because you can't ride it on the motor, you can't pedal at home, you can't turn the wheel because it's collapsed. You've got to pick up the back of your bike and wheelbarrow the thing home. So let's get in and make one of these chain tensioners. And while I'm in there, I'm going to fix problem number 2 with these bikes. Come in close and have a look. Right, now the other wee problem that these bikes have is where the chain goes around the front sprocket, there is enough room between the casing and the chain, if the chain was to come off, for it to bunch up in here, which will lock up your entire rear end. If that happens at speed, once again you're in huge trouble. So what I'm going to do is, while I've got this cover off to make the chain tensioner, I'm going to clean this within an inch of its life with degreaser and a toothbrush. And I'm going to get in here, remove all the grease, then I'm going to roughen it up with sandpaper inside the case, and I'm going to put a reinforced epoxy putty in the top of the case above the chain, so that the chain has nowhere to go into, and that will stop the chain bunching up and locking up the rear wheel should the worst come to the worst and I lose the chain, even with my new fabulous chain tensioner that it's going to have by the end of the day. So let's hit it and see how much I can do before the hot sun comes around here. Working in the shade today on the deck. I've put a big tarpaulin down so that if I drop any screws, they don't drop down through the holes in the deck. Right, I'm probably not going to stop talking all the way through this, because I know that there's going to be a whole lot of different bits of information that I can give you. So anyway, the reason we're here, we're going to remove this thing, because if these things ever get out of line, it's only a very short distance until they get tangled in the spokes. This one has clearly been played with by the guy who used to own it, because he lived on a boat. These are 4 random stainless steel bolts. So on a boat, everything's stainless steel. He's gone into his junk box and has pulled out these bolts. Now, are they tight enough? In my opinion, no. That wouldn't take much of a push to get into the spokes, because you've got to remember, when that roller's on behind it and these spokes come round, they're a very small distance away, and the slightest bit of misalignment can result in catastrophe. So this is going to be resigned to the useful box. Some nice stainless steel nuts and bolts, they'll probably come in handy for something else. He's got a vast assortment of washers here. Nothing seems to be compatible with anything else. They're all different. So yeah, like me, he's a salvage expert. But as I've said in previous videos to this bike being around 50 years old and heavy as, and also it's a large, it's too big for me, I'm going to take this motor out, which is a gorgeous little motor, and I'm going to put it in a frame of my own that I've had for a few years, a bike that I've been riding that I really enjoy. Right, that's got rid of the rubbish. Now we're going to take this cover off. You know, it's amazing how many different manufacturers there seems to be, or how many different quality levels there seem to be in these kits. It's a minefield for the new buyer. If you're keen on buying one of these kits, get in touch with me. I'll send you a link to a decent kit that will suit your needs. There's different engine sizes. There's everything from 49cc through to 110cc. But the 110cc really isn't 110cc. The Chinese just call it that. It's actually 88cc. Yeah, the Chinese seem to believe that you can call an engine what you like. And what they do is they warm them up a bit, give them a bit more performance. And when they do that, they pretend that it's a larger engine and they just call it a bigger cc. Right, this is going to be taken inside and become my pattern to make my new component. So I'll unscrew that. We'll take this inside and play with it. Put that back on there. And now you can clearly see what's going on here. This is the cavity up inside here where the chain can double over and jam up. We're going to fix that properly, and we'll give a big clean in behind here, and then I'm going to fill this area with epoxy metal putty. Put a business card probably over the chain. That will give me just enough clearance for the chain to run without it getting jammed up in here. Now you need to break your chain to get it off unless you remove the sprocket. By the way, this clutch actuating plunger just lifts out. When you take it out, be very careful, because in behind it there's a ball and you don't want to lose that ball. That's why I've got the tarp down. I'm just going to tip the bike over and we'll see if the ball comes out. Quite often, here it is, quite often it's covered in grease and it sticks in there. I've been using this stuff for donkey's years. It's New Zealand made. It's designed as a structural filler. People use it in the car restoration and rust repair industry on cars for bridging gaps. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. It sets like rock. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in here. It's full of fibres and metal filings. Yeah, this has so many uses because it's so damn strong. It's a lot more expensive than ordinary automotive filler, but it's not talcum powder. This stuff sets like, well, at least like aluminium. You can file it, screw it, thread it. It's a lot like the American JB Weld, except it has fibres in it. Great product. Anyway, that is going to get wiped into my recess. Did I just say that? Let's see, here we go. Get the plastic sitting in the right place. A wipe of this inside there, and it will push the plastic down into place, I hope. I'm just going to leave that now to set. Come back in half an hour.
Right, now there's nothing more boring than watching filler dry, so come over here and have a look at this.
You see, in September last year, September the 4th, I was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 heavily metastasizing prostate cancer. It's all through my body. I've got what they're calling innumerable tumours throughout my bones. I've got copies of the scans. Have a look. Now they've given me a 30% chance of lasting 3 years. So you need to be a bit of a mathematician to figure out exactly what that means, but the way I figure it is 30%, call that a third of 3 years, that's a year. They're telling me I've got a year. Well, I'm 6 months in and I'm feeling so good. We've tried their chemo and we've tried their hormone therapy. Both have been a bit of a failure. I'm not going anywhere near radiation, and the problem's too widespread for surgery to be of any use. So what I've done is I've started using this selection of unauthorized treatments. I'm not going to tell you why I'm using each one because that would take too long. All I'm going to do is ask you to do your own research, and don't use the search engine that rhymes with Google. You need to use an impartial search engine, one that will give you all the results, not hand-picked, selected results from websites that they choose to promote. So starting on this end, we've got boron. This is what I call a mother solution. It's a tincture, a strong liquid, and you take 1 teaspoon of that every day. That's made from borax powder from a hardware store. Then we've got DMSO. DMSO is dimethyl sulfoxide. It's used by veterinarians and athletes. It's used in medical circles in other countries, but not in most of the countries where people will be watching this on YouTube. Here I've got chlorine dioxide dairy sanitizer. Now, you need to find out for yourself why I would be using chlorine dioxide dairy sanitizer and how I would be using it, because we can't talk about that here on YouTube. Up here, I've got hydrogen peroxide, 7.5% food grade. I'm also using this to help me stay healthy. Do some research. Down on this side, I've got methylene blue. Methylene blue is exceptionally potent. It has many benefits on the human body, and I feel better all round for having discovered methylene blue. Have a look at that. Here I've got horse paste. This is ivermectin, and I've been using quite a lot of this since September last year. And lastly, colloidal silver. Colloidal silver has been banned. I made 2 videos about colloidal silver 2 or 3 years ago. They both got removed from YouTube for what they called medical information. And yet, all of the information that I shared in that video came from respectable medical websites. So if you or anyone else are affected by the big C, I've got a whole playlist that follows my journey in fighting cancer. It's being added to regularly because this will be something that never stops now. This is my new lifestyle. So if you want to follow me, that link is up here. Alright, so we're going to give that enough room here for my pivot point, which will be about there, and then we're going to come up we can follow the profile of this to about here. Then it's got to come away and out so that we can get a few holes in it, and then back up to here and down to there again. Okay, so there's my 3 mounting points. That is going to be the pivot point for the arm. Let's get this thing cut out. Right, I've just been out the back and I've got an old ride-on mower deck from underneath, and they have various pulleys that need to be pulled tight, so I salvaged this rusty spring off it. It's about the right weight, but it's a bit long, so I'm going to clean it and then I'm going to warm the spring up with the gas in the center here and stretch it at the same time. That will relax it, and I can pull a little bit of extra wire out and I'll be able to make this into 2 springs. So watch me do this. Right. So now we're going to warm it up in the middle. Put some stretch onto it. Right, now, I think that's a good tension. Let's go fit it. Right, we're in business. Everything's made, everything can go back in. Put the ball down the hole, in goes the plunger. We're now going to take out the little piece of plastic that I put in there with something. I did have a small screwdriver, but I haven't got it now. There we go, there's our bit of plastic out. That's going to stop the chain climbing up and doubling over and doing its business in there. That's working as it should. Got to make sure that arm's in the right position before you go putting this back together. Right. Two cap screws slightly shortened into the holes. That is really, really nice. I'm super happy with that. You see, if anything happens to this now, there's no way it can damage the rear wheel.
To be continued next week.